The mahogany conference table at Williams Manufacturing gleamed under the fluorescent lights as I took my seat at the far end, closest to the door. It wasn't an accident that I'd been placed there. For the past 3 years since grandfather's death, I'd occupied the least important chair in what had once been our family boardroom. Uncle Robert sat at the head of the table, occupying grandfather's former position as CEO of Williams Manufacturing, the industrial equipment company that had supported our family for 4 generations. My cousin Bradley sat to his right, having been named Vice President of Operations despite having graduated business school just 18 months ago. Today's board meeting will address the company's expansion into the Southeast markets, Uncle Robert announced to the 12 family members and outside investors assembled around the table. Bradley has prepared a comprehensive analysis of our growth opportunities. I kept my eyes on my notepad, sketching geometric patterns while half listening to the familiar dynamics of family business politics. Before we begin, Bradley said, standing up with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted his place in the family hierarchy, I think we need to address the elephant in the room. He looked directly at me. Emma's continued presence at these board meetings is becoming problematic, Bradley continued. She doesn't understand manufacturing operations, has no relevant business experience, and frankly her questions during meetings demonstrate a fundamental lack of comprehension about how industrial companies operate. Murmurs of agreement rippled around the table. My Aunt Patricia nodded vigorously. My Uncle James looked uncomfortable but didn't disagree. Bradley makes a valid point, Uncle Robert said, adjusting his tie. Emma, I know grandfather included you in his will as a minor shareholder, but board meetings involve complex business decisions that require industry expertise. Family business is above your level, Bradley declared, his voice carrying the theatrical authority he'd learned in his MBA program. Manufacturing operations, supply chain management, industrial sales, these aren't areas where you can contribute meaningfully. Everyone agreed, some nodding, others murmuring approval. Even my own mother, sitting 3 seats away, looked apologetic but didn't contradict her nephew. You work for some consulting firm, Bradley continued, doing project management or administrative support. That's fine work, but it doesn't qualify you to participate in strategic decisions about a $400 million manufacturing company. I nodded quietly, continuing to sketch on my notepad. The patterns were becoming more complex, interlocking circles that formed larger geometric shapes. Furthermore, Uncle Robert added, Emma's 4% shareholding, while generous of your grandfather, doesn't justify taking up space at board meetings where we need to make efficient decisions. I think what everyone's trying to say, Aunt Patricia said with false gentleness, is that maybe it's time for Emma to consider selling her shares back to the family. We could offer fair market value and she could invest the money in something more appropriate for her situation. Like a nice mutual fund, Bradley suggested with barely concealed condescension. Something that doesn't require understanding complex business operations. The conversation continued around me, various family members discussing the logistics of buying out my grandfather's misguided generosity in leaving me shares of a company I supposedly couldn't understand. I finished my geometric sketch and opened my briefcase, withdrawing a manila folder that had been sitting beside my chair throughout the entire meeting. Actually, I said, placing the folder on the table in front of me, before we discuss my shareholding situation, there's something everyone should know. Emma, Uncle Robert said impatiently, we're trying to have a serious business discussion. This is a serious business discussion, I said, opening the folder and removing a document. Phoenix Holdings just acquired the entire company. The room went silent. What did you say? Bradley's voice came out as a whisper. I placed the acquisition documents on the table where everyone could see them. Phoenix Holdings completed the acquisition of Williams Manufacturing 3 days ago. The transaction was finalized yesterday afternoon. Uncle Robert was staring at the papers like they might be written in a foreign language. Emma, that's impossible. No one has made an acquisition offer. Phoenix Holdings has been acquiring shares through private transactions for the past 18 months, I explained calmly. We now own 73% of Williams Manufacturing, giving us controlling interest and full operational authority. Bradley's hands started shaking as he reached for the documents. This can't be legal. We would have known if someone was buying company shares. All transactions were conducted through registered brokers and properly reported to the SEC. I said. The documentation is in perfect order. Aunt Patricia was reading over Bradley's shoulder, her face growing pale. Emma, these documents show Phoenix Holdings as a private equity firm based in Delaware. Correct. But who owns Phoenix Holdings? Uncle Robert demanded. I removed another document from my folder. Phoenix Holdings is a wholly owned subsidiary of Meridian Capital Group, which I founded 4 years ago. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the air conditioning cycling on. You founded. Uncle Robert couldn't finish the sentence. Meridian Capital Group, I confirmed. We're a private equity firm specializing in manufacturing and industrial operations acquisitions. Williams Manufacturing is our 12th portfolio company. Bradley was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Emma, you work for a consulting firm. I work for Meridian Capital Group, I corrected, which I founded and where I serve as managing partner. The consulting work you've been dismissing is private equity analysis and acquisition strategy. Mom found her voice. Emma, are you saying you own this company now? Phoenix Holdings owns 73% of Williams Manufacturing. I personally own 89% of Phoenix Holdings. So yes, I effectively control this company. Uncle Robert was frantically reading through the acquisition documents. This shows a purchase price of $340 million for controlling interest. Emma, where did you get $340 million? Meridian Capital Group manages approximately $2.8 billion in assets across various industrial investments, I said. The Williams Manufacturing acquisition was funded through a combination of firm capital and institutional investor partnerships. $2.8 billion? Aunt Patricia's voice came out as a squeak. Our current assets under management, yes. We focus on acquiring underperforming manufacturing companies and optimizing their operations for improved market performance. Bradley was still holding the acquisition papers, his hands visibly trembling. But Emma, this means you've been planning to buy out the family business while sitting in our board meetings. I've been conducting due diligence on Williams Manufacturing as a potential acquisition target, I corrected. Your board meetings provided valuable insight into management decision-making and operational efficiency. You were spying on us, Uncle Robert accused. I was attending board meetings as a legitimate shareholder while also analyzing the company's investment potential. There's no conflict of interest in thorough due diligence. The room erupted in confused voices. Everyone talking at once, asking questions, demanding explanations. Quiet! Uncle Robert shouted and the room fell silent. Emma, explain this situation immediately. Meridian Capital Group identifies manufacturing companies with strong fundamentals but inefficient management, I said. Williams Manufacturing fit our acquisition criteria perfectly. Excellent facilities, skilled workforce, established customer relationships, but declining market share due to poor strategic decision-making. Poor strategic decision-making? Bradley's voice cracked slightly. The Southeast expansion plan you were about to present, for example. Our analysis shows it would cost $47 million and likely result in market share losses due to established competitors and supply chain inefficiencies. But I spent 6 months developing that expansion strategy, Bradley protested. I know. I've been reviewing all internal strategic documents as part of our due diligence process. Uncle Robert was reading more of the acquisition paperwork. Emma, this shows that Phoenix Holdings already controls the board of directors. As of yesterday, yes. Controlling shareholding gives us authority to reconstitute the board and management structure. Meaning what exactly? I removed another document from my folder. Meaning that effective immediately, Williams Manufacturing will operate under new management appointed by Phoenix Holdings. And what happens to current management? Aunt Patricia asked, though her expression suggested she already knew the answer. Uncle Robert, Bradley, and the current senior management team will receive generous severance packages, I said. Phoenix Holdings typically provides 6 months' salary plus healthcare benefits to displaced executives. Displaced executives? Uncle Robert's face was turning red. Emma, this is our family business. For generations of Williams family leadership. Which is precisely why the company has been declining, I said gently. Family businesses often struggle with professional management practices. Nepotism, resistance to change, emotional decision-making. These are common challenges in family-controlled companies. You're firing the entire family from our own company? Bradley asked incredulously. I'm implementing professional management practices that will improve operational efficiency and market competitiveness, I corrected. Some family members may be retained in appropriate roles based on qualifications rather than family relationships. Mom was staring at me in shock. Emma, how long have you been planning this? Meridian Capital Group identified Williams Manufacturing as an acquisition target 14 months ago. We've been building our position gradually to minimize market disruption. While attending our board meetings and pretending to be just another family member, Uncle James said bitterly. While fulfilling my obligations as a shareholder and simultaneously conducting professional investment analysis, I said. Both roles were legitimate. Uncle Robert stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Emma, I forbid this acquisition. As CEO of Williams Manufacturing, I reject Phoenix Holdings' takeover attempt. Uncle Robert, you're no longer CEO of Williams Manufacturing, I said calmly. Phoenix Holdings' controlling interest gives us full authority over corporate governance and management appointments. This is illegal, Bradley declared. We'll file lawsuits, challenge the acquisition, force you to reverse these transactions. All acquisition activities were conducted in full compliance with SEC regulations and corporate law, I said. Our legal team includes specialists in private equity transactions and manufacturing industry acquisitions. The documentation has been thoroughly vetted. Aunt Patricia was crying quietly. Emma, this company is our family's legacy. Your grandfather built this business from nothing. Which is exactly why I want to save it, I said. Under current management, Williams Manufacturing was headed for bankruptcy within 3 years. Market share declining, operational costs increasing, strategic planning inadequate for competitive pressures. You're destroying 4 generations of family business, Uncle Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm preserving 4 generations of family business by implementing management practices that will ensure its survival, I corrected. The room fell silent as everyone processed the magnitude of what had just happened. Finally, Bradley spoke. Emma, what happens now? Phoenix Holdings will immediately implement operational improvements. Updated equipment, streamlined production processes, enhanced quality control, expanded customer development, I said. We expect to increase revenue by 35% and profit margins by 22% within 18 months. And what about us? Mom asked quietly. Family members who want to continue working for Williams Manufacturing can apply for positions based on their qualifications, I said. Uncle James has excellent engineering expertise that would be valuable in our operations improvement initiative. Apply for positions? Uncle Robert's voice cracked. In our own family company? In a professionally managed manufacturing company that happens to have been founded by our family, I corrected. Emma, Bradley said, his earlier arrogance completely gone, I need to ask you something. What's that? When you said family business was above my level, were you right? I looked at my cousin who had spent the past hour lecturing me about my lack of business understanding while I controlled the acquisition of his family's company. Bradley, you have potential, I said. Your MBA education provides good theoretical foundation. But you need practical experience in manufacturing operations before you're ready for senior management responsibilities. Meaning Phoenix Holdings would be willing to offer you an entry-level position in our operations management training program. You could learn manufacturing from the ground up while earning your place in company leadership. An entry-level position? Bradley's voice was barely audible. With performance-based advancement opportunities. If you demonstrate competence and leadership capability, there's no reason you couldn't eventually manage significant operations. Uncle Robert sat back down heavily. Emma, I have one question. What's that? Are you happy? Destroying your family's legacy to prove some point about business competence. I looked around the conference room at 12 family members who were processing the reality that their incompetent relative had just acquired their family business. Uncle Robert, I'm not destroying anything. I'm saving a company that was failing under family management and transforming it into a competitive manufacturing operation that can survive for another 4 generations. But at what cost? At the cost of recognizing that family loyalty doesn't substitute for professional competence, I said. Williams Manufacturing needs efficient operations, strategic planning, and competitive market positioning. Those requirements don't change just because the company has been family-owned. Mom finally spoke. Emma, how long have you been running a private equity firm? 4 years. We started with one acquisition and grew through successful operational improvements and strategic reinvestment. And you never told us? I tried to tell you about Meridian Capital Group. Every time I mentioned private equity work or acquisition analysis, someone said I was playing with spreadsheets or doing administrative support for real investors. The memory of previous dismissals hung in the air. Just like when I tried to explain our manufacturing efficiency analysis, and Bradley said I didn't understand real business operations, I continued. But Emma, Aunt Patricia said, if you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars, why didn't you correct us? Because I wanted to understand Williams Manufacturing's actual operational capabilities before making acquisition decisions, I said. Your board meetings provided valuable insight into management practices and strategic thinking. You were evaluating us, Uncle Robert said with dawning realization. I was conducting due diligence on a potential investment, I confirmed. The fact that it was also my family's company made the analysis more complex, not less thorough. 6 months later, Williams Manufacturing had implemented the operational improvements Phoenix Holdings had promised. Revenue increased by 31%, profit margins improved by 19%, and the company had secured 3 major new contracts in competitive markets. Bradley had accepted the entry-level position in operations management and was learning manufacturing processes from experienced floor supervisors. Uncle James had been hired as senior engineering consultant and was leading the equipment modernization initiative. Uncle Robert had used his severance package to start a small consulting firm helping family businesses transition to professional management practices. At the company's annual shareholder meeting, the first under Phoenix Holdings ownership, I presented the financial results to the board. Williams Manufacturing has achieved operational metrics that exceed projections for efficiency, quality, and customer satisfaction, I reported. The company is positioned for sustainable growth and market expansion. Bradley raised his hand. Emma, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think the family business is still above my level? I smiled, looking at my cousin who had spent 6 months learning manufacturing operations from the ground up instead of relying on MBA theory and family connections. Bradley, I think you're beginning to understand what family business really requires. Respect for the work, commitment to excellence, and willingness to earn your position through competence rather than inheritance. Does that mean I might eventually manage operations? It means you're learning what management actually involves, I said. Whether you eventually manage operations depends on whether you continue developing the skills and judgment that effective leadership requires. After the meeting, Uncle Robert approached me in the parking lot. Emma, I want to apologize, he said. For dismissing your capabilities, for assuming you couldn't understand our business, for treating you like an outsider in your own family company. Uncle Robert, you were protecting what you thought was best for the family business. No, I was protecting my own position, he said honestly. I was threatened by the idea that someone might understand the business better than I did. Understanding the business and managing it effectively are different skills, I said. You built relationships with customers and maintained operations for years. That experience has value, even if strategic planning wasn't your strongest area. Is there room for that experience in the new Williams Manufacturing? I considered the question. Phoenix Holdings values practical expertise alongside strategic planning. If you're interested, we could discuss a consulting role that uses your customer relationship knowledge. I'd like that very much. Looking back on that board meeting where Bradley had declared family business above my level, I realized that he'd been partially right. Traditional family business practices, based on inheritance rather than competence, had been above my level of tolerance. But professional business management, based on operational efficiency and strategic planning, had been exactly at my level of expertise. The difference was that I'd built my level up to meet the challenge, rather than expecting the challenge to accommodate my limitations.
Hi, I'm Lisa. Here we are. 2 years ago, my husband James and I finally achieved our dream, buying the perfect house in the suburbs of Boston. It was everything we had ever wanted. 3 bedrooms, a gorgeous kitchen with granite countertops, and the cutest little breakfast nook overlooking a garden. We worked tirelessly for this place, saving every penny from my marketing agency job and James's engineering career. For the first few months, it felt like living in a fairy tale. We hosted Sunday dinners for James's family, his parents, Patricia and Robert, and his younger brother, Mike. Patricia always brought her famous apple pie. Robert told his endearingly bad dad jokes, and Mike, though perpetually late, redeemed himself by bringing an excellent bottle of wine. It was perfect. This house was made for family gatherings, Patricia would say as she helped me clear the dishes. You two picked such a wonderful home. But then Mike started dating Sarah. At first, Sarah seemed nice enough. She worked in real estate, always dressed impeccably, and laughed at all the right moments. But something about her didn't sit well with me. She had this odd habit of wandering around our house during dinners, running her fingers along the walls, peeking into closets, and asking questions that felt calculated. Everything changed at last month's Sunday dinner. Mike stood up and announced their engagement, and naturally, everyone was thrilled. Champagne was poured, toasts were made. But then Sarah, swirling her glass with a sly smile, said, "Now that we're going to be family, we should talk about family properties." The room went silent. James squeezed my hand under the table. "What do you mean, family properties?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. Patricia jumped in quickly, her tone overly cheerful. "Oh, families help each other, especially young couples just starting out." Mike nodded, giving me a smile that sent a chill down my spine. "Exactly, Mom. James and Lisa are already established. They could easily find another place." I nearly choked on my drink. Another place. Sarah chimed in, inspecting her manicure as if this was the most casual conversation in the world. "This house would be perfect for us, especially with the nursery we're planning." James stiffened beside me. Robert suddenly became engrossed in his phone. The perfect family dinner crumbled into a series of awkward glances and forced throat clearing. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. The way Sarah had been mentally measuring our rooms, how Patricia kept dropping hints about family obligations in recent weeks. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. And trust me, you'll want to hear every detail of how this entitled disaster unfolded. The very next morning, the text messages began. Mike sent me a novel-length message about doing the right thing for family and how Sarah had already started planning renovations. Over coffee that afternoon, I showed the messages to my sister Amy. "Are they serious?" Amy asked, nearly spitting out her latte. "They want your house as a wedding gift? That's insane." I nodded and scrolled to show her more. It gets better. Patricia's been sending me daily essays about family duty and how James and I are more established, so we should help the young couple. "You're only 3 years older than Mike," Amy said, incredulous. "Exactly," I sighed. And that was just the beginning of the storm. Here's how it all went down. I hadn't wanted to go to yesterday's family dinner, but James insisted. "We can't let them drive us away," he said. Big mistake. The moment we walked in, Sarah launched into a monologue about paint samples for her future living room. "Actually," I said, cutting her off, "we're about to repaint our living room ourselves. Navy blue." Patricia's fork clattered against her plate. "But Sarah hates dark colors. You should really consult her before making any changes to the house." That's when I discreetly started recording on my phone. My best friend Carol, who happens to be a lawyer, had advised me to document everything. Smart move. "Mom," James said firmly, "it's our house. We're not consulting anyone about changes." Mike's face turned red. "Come on, bro. You know Sarah, and I need this. We can't afford anything in this neighborhood on our own." "Not our problem," I replied flatly. Sarah burst into tears. "You're ruining everything. We already told everyone at our engagement party that we'd be moving into this house." The room erupted. Patricia wailed about ungrateful children. Mike slammed his fist on the table, making the glasses jump. Sarah kept crying, crocodile tears, obviously. Robert stared silently at his plate, avoiding eye contact with anyone. "This is what's going to happen," Mike growled, leaning across the table. "You're going to sign over this house as our wedding gift, or you'll regret it. Family can make life very difficult." Things got ugly fast. Sarah took to Facebook, posting daily sob stories about selfish family members, destroying her and Mike's dreams. She never named us directly, but everyone knew. The comments were brutal. Mutual friends took sides, distant relatives offered unsolicited opinions, and Patricia gleefully shared every post, adding her own commentary about heartless children. Then James's cousin Thomas reached out, a real estate agent who'd worked with Sarah before. He dropped a bombshell. "You won't believe what I found," he said. Sarah was fired from her agency last year for trying to manipulate elderly clients into selling below market value to her private investors. Private investors? James asked. Shell companies Mike created, Thomas explained. He's got 3 failed businesses under different names, massive debt, and 2 pending lawsuits from angry investors. They're not after your house because they love it. They're desperate for assets. Everything clicked. The rushed engagement, the constant pressure, Sarah's fixation on our property value. They needed something to sell or use as leverage for their mounting debts. Meanwhile, Patricia's antics escalated. She started showing up at my office unannounced, crying in the lobby about her poor baby boy who just needed a chance. When security escorted her out, she screamed that I was destroying the family. One of my clients, witnessing the spectacle, suggested a restraining order. Carol sent them a formal cease and desist email, warning that further harassment would have consequences. Their response? Mike created a YouTube video titled How My Brother's Wife Tore Our Family Apart. It spread quickly in our local community, and my phone blew up with messages from church members, old classmates, and even my daughter's dance teacher, all asking what was going on. Amy, my sister, helped me organize everything: screenshots, recordings, witness statements. They're digging their own grave, she said as she sorted evidence into neat folders. Keep letting them talk. The family split into clear camps. Robert, finally breaking his silence, called James privately. I can't support what they're doing, he admitted. I found credit card statements. Mike's in deeper trouble than anyone knows. Thomas dug even deeper into Mike's finances. He's been borrowing from everyone, family, friends, even sketchy online lenders. Sarah's been helping him hide it all. But they're about to crash hard. Through it all, I stayed quiet, carefully documenting every threat, every lie, every manipulative attempt. Let them think they were wearing us down. Let them get bolder. Because while they were busy trying to destroy our reputation, they had no idea Thomas and Carol were building an airtight case against them. And then the reckoning came. Thomas submitted his findings to the state licensing board. Within hours, Sarah's real estate license was suspended, pending investigation into her illegal property schemes. Her perfect social media facade crumbled as former clients came forward, sharing their horror stories. Sarah left a furious voicemail. I can't believe you ruined my career. This is all your fault. But it wasn't my fault. It was theirs. Sometimes the best revenge is letting people's true nature come to light. Revenge isn't about getting even. It's about holding up a mirror and letting karma do the rest. The dominoes were just starting to fall. Carol filed our harassment case, presenting a flawless package of evidence: recordings, screenshots, witness statements, YouTube videos, social media posts, and even Patricia's meltdown at my office. Everything was documented in meticulous, chronological detail. Then came the next wave. Mike's former business partners stepped forward with proof of his fraudulent schemes. Those shell companies, not just failing, illegal. The police got involved, and suddenly Sarah's designer bags started appearing on resale sites. She was clearly trying to distance herself from the chaos. I had no idea about his debts. Sarah wailed in a tearful new video, her engagement ring conspicuously missing. He lied to everyone. Patricia scrambled to do damage control, but her attempts to paint it all as a misunderstanding fell flat against the mountain of evidence. Mike's response? He showed up at our house one night, drunk and raging about how we ruined everything. Our security cameras captured it all, and the restraining order came through the next day. As for Sarah, she moved back to her parents' house in Ohio. Don't contact me again, she texted Mike. My lawyer will handle everything. The final blow came when it was revealed that the online lenders Mike had borrowed from weren't exactly legal. The FBI got involved, and watching him do the perp walk on local news felt surreal. Patricia sold her prized country club membership to help cover Mike's mounting legal fees. The same people who had called us heartless were now avoiding her in a grocery store. Funny how fast social circles shrink when scandal hits. As for us, our house finally feels like home again, free of their toxic energy. We still host Sunday dinners, but now with people who actually care about us. Amy, Carol, Thomas, and even Robert, who's slowly rebuilding his relationship with James without Patricia's interference. Mike's facing serious charges. Patricia's in therapy. Sarah's starting over in Ohio. And us? We just repainted the living room navy blue. Sometimes, standing your ground means watching others fall on theirs. Our house isn't just walls and windows. It's a symbol of everything we worked for, everything we protected. And now, finally, it's at peace. Like I said, karma doesn't need your help. It just needs an audience. So what would you have done if your brother-in-law declared your house a family obligation? Would you have exposed his schemes immediately or collected evidence quietly? Like we did. Share your thoughts in the comments. Some people say family should always come first, but where do you draw the line between supporting loved ones and enabling toxic behavior? Was I too harsh or not harsh enough? If you enjoyed this journey of justice served, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about standing up to entitled family members. Every like helps more people find these stories and maybe even gives them the courage to stand up for themselves too. This story has come to an end, but your thoughts could help someone going through something similar right now. What red flags did you notice early in the story that I might have missed? Hi, I'm Sophia. Today, I want to share a chapter of my life that was equal parts joyful and heartbreaking. Before we dive in, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories like this. Now, let's get into it. My husband Mark and I were over the moon when we finally adopted our son Lucas. He was about to turn 7, and we wanted his birthday to be unforgettable, a celebration of him joining our family, but not everyone shared our excitement. One afternoon, as I scrolled through party themes, Mark walked into the room, his expression uneasy. "Have you talked to my mom about the party yet?" he asked. I sighed. Not yet, but I can't avoid it forever. She's going to find out sooner or later. When I finally called his mom, Linda, her voice was clipped, her words brimming with disapproval. "Sophia, why make such a spectacle over this boy?" she asked, not bothering to hide her disdain. "Because he's our son, Linda," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "We want his first birthday with us to be special." "A party won't change what he is," she sneered. Her bitterness stung, but I still extended the invitation, hoping that seeing Lucas happy would soften her heart. The week flew by as I booked a community center, ordered Lucas's favorite superhero cake, and sent out invitations. My best friend, Sarah, came over to help set up the day before. As we hung decorations, Sarah turned to me. "Are you sure inviting Linda is a good idea? Last time didn't exactly go smoothly." I tied a balloon to a chair, hesitating for a moment. She's family. Maybe seeing Lucas this happy will change her perspective. Sarah gave me a skeptical look. "Just be careful. She can be cruel." The morning of the party, Lucas was buzzing with excitement, his energy lighting up the house. Guests arrived, bringing gifts and hugs. But when Linda walked in, her tight smile and cold demeanor instantly chilled the warm atmosphere. She pulled me aside almost immediately. "This is a mistake, Sophia," she whispered, her voice sharp. Frustration bubbled inside me. "He's a child, Linda, your grandson. Can't you just be happy for him?" Her eyes scanned the room with disdain. "These people are fools. And you? You're the biggest fool of all for thinking he can replace real family." I took a deep breath, forcing a calm I didn't feel. "Today is about Lucas. Please, for his sake, let's keep the peace." As the party picked up, kids ran around with cake-smeared faces, and Lucas was beaming, surrounded by his new friends. I kept a wary eye on Linda, who lingered at the edges, her presence a dark shadow over the celebration. But I didn't expect what came next. The music was lively, and the room buzzed with laughter when suddenly Linda stepped forward, grabbing the DJ's microphone. "Can I have your attention, please?" Her voice cut through the music, silencing the crowd. A tense hush fell over the room as all eyes turned to her. "I have something important to say about this celebration," she began. "What is she doing?" Mark muttered beside me, his jaw tight. Linda's voice dripped with disdain. "Today we're supposedly celebrating Lucas, a boy who has no rightful place in this family." Gasps rippled through the room. I clenched my fists, heat rising in my cheeks. "He's just as much a part of this family as anyone else. I said, my voice trembling with controlled anger. Linda scoffed, her tone sharp and cruel. A child plucked from nowhere? He'll never carry on the family legacy. Mark stepped forward, his voice firm. Mom, that's enough. This is neither the time nor the place. Ignoring him, Linda turned to Lucas, her expression softening in a way that felt sickeningly manipulative. Lucas, sweetheart, she said sweetly, bending down to his level. Let's get away from this nonsense. How about we go for a little walk? Lucas looked up at her, confusion clouding his bright eyes. He hesitated, glancing back at me. But I want to stay at my party. Lucas cried, his voice trembling. This isn't your real family's party. You don't belong here, Linda whispered harshly, loud enough for others nearby to hear. She reached out to grab his hand, but I was at Lucas's side in an instant, pulling him behind me. No, stay away from him, I said, my voice sharp and unwavering. Linda sneered, her gaze darting around the room as guests began to murmur and pull out their phones. This is exactly what I mean. You people are deluding yourselves, she hissed. Why are you doing this, Linda? Why can't you just be happy for him? My voice broke, frustration and sadness welling up. He's not my grandson, she declared coldly. He will never be. Enough, Mom, Mark's voice cut through, his tone seething with anger. You're leaving, now. As he guided his mother out, she resisted, her voice loud and venomous. You'll all see the truth eventually. This isn't the end. Reluctantly, she left, but the damage had already been done. The chatter of the guests returned, uneasy and subdued, as I handed out party favors. Then a scream sliced through the noise. I spun around. Lucas was gone. Linda was nowhere in sight. Panic surged through me. Mark and I bolted outside, scanning the parking lot frantically. There, at the edge, I saw Linda dragging Lucas by the arm toward her car. Linda, stop, I shouted, my voice trembling with fear and fury. Lucas struggled, tears streaming down his face. Mom, help. Mark reached him first, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. Mom, what are you doing? Linda glared at him, tightening her grip on Lucas. I'm fixing a mistake, she spat. Let him go, Mark demanded, his voice a dangerous calm as he stepped forward. The confrontation drew a crowd. Guests spilled out of the community center, some calling for help, others recording the scene. Linda's eyes darted around, realizing too late the spectacle she had caused. With a harsh shove, she released Lucas, who ran straight into my arms. I held him tightly, feeling his small body tremble as he buried his face in my shoulder. Linda stormed off, disappearing into her car as the crowd dispersed, murmuring in shock. The atmosphere was heavy, the party's spirit dampened. I knelt to Lucas's level, brushing his tear-streaked face. Hey, it's okay, I whispered, my voice shaking. You are loved, and you are wanted. Don't ever forget that. Sarah approached, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. Everyone here knows the truth, Sophia. We love Lucas, and we've got your back. I stood addressing the remaining guests. Thank you for staying. This celebration is about family, Lucas's family. And family isn't just about blood. It's about love and support. The music started again, softer this time, and Lucas's friends quickly pulled him back into the festivities. Slowly, the shadow of the earlier incident began to lift, replaced by laughter and warmth. Thank you, Sarah, I said quietly, my voice thick with emotion. Just doing what's right, she replied. Lucas deserves all the happiness we can give him. Mark and I exchanged a look, a silent promise passing between us. No matter what it took, we would protect Lucas. The aftermath of the party rippled through the community like a shockwave. Word of Linda's behavior spread quickly, and support for Lucas poured in from friends and neighbors. In our kitchen the next morning, I sat across from Mark, anger simmering beneath my exhaustion. Can you believe what your mother did? I asked, my voice low but fierce. Mark rubbed his temples, looking worn. I can't, Sophia. I just can't understand how she thought that was okay. We need to do something. We can't let her get away with this, I said, my mind racing. Together, we devised a plan. Not to take Linda to court, but to expose her for the person she truly was. With the help of Sarah, we started sharing our story with family and friends. Social media lit up with messages of support for Lucas and widespread condemnation of Linda's outdated, harmful views. Meanwhile, I began a more covert operation. I knew Linda often ranted about family purity during phone calls, so I decided it was time the world heard her true thoughts. Linda, I said during one call, feigning curiosity, some people at the party were saying you might have a point. Maybe you could explain it to me again. She took the bait, her tone smug. It's simple, really. Bloodline is everything. You can't just bring someone from the outside and expect them to fit in. These adopted children, they dilute our heritage. I recorded every word, knowing this would be vital. After weeks of gathering evidence, Mark and I prepared to confront her publicly. At a family gathering, Linda arrived as expected, wearing her usual air of superiority. But as the evening unfolded, whispers of discontent spread among relatives who'd heard rumors of her behavior. When the moment was right, I connected my phone to the sound system and pressed play. You can't just bring someone from the outside and expect them to fit in. Linda's voice echoed, every word cutting like a knife. Gasps filled the room. Linda froze, her face paling as her own words condemned her. She tried to interrupt, but I played another recording. These adopted children, they dilute our heritage. The room erupted in murmurs of shock and disgust. Linda's composure crumbled, her eyes darting around in search of allies. None came. As her own words condemned her, Linda stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing as she scanned the room for any support or sympathy. None came. Even those who had remained neutral or silent before couldn't ignore the blatant hatred and bigotry now exposed so plainly. How could you say these things, Mom? Mark's voice broke the silence, his disappointment palpable. I was just concerned for the family, Linda stammered, her usual composure crumbling under the weight of the confrontation. Concerned by isolating a child? By spreading hate? I countered, stepping forward. This isn't concern, Linda. It's prejudice. The room remained heavy with tension, the last of the recordings fading into silence. Relatives who had once greeted her warmly now turned their backs, whispering amongst themselves, their expressions a mixture of anger and sadness. As Linda looked around, the realization of her alienation sank in. Her face crumpled, and though she moved as if to speak, perhaps to justify or apologize, no one was interested in hearing more. One by one, the family members shifted their attention to Lucas, surrounding him with kind words and warm gestures. Linda, now a pariah within her own family, left the house without another word. Her departure was marked not by the dramatic outburst she might have hoped for, but by a profound, heavy silence. After she was gone, Mark took my hand, squeezing it gently. "Thank you," he whispered, "for standing up for our son, for standing up for our family." "It had to be done," I replied, watching Lucas laugh, blissfully unaware of the storm that had just passed. Secure in the love and acceptance of his true family, he radiated happiness. That night, as the house quieted and the last of the relatives left, we sat with Lucas, holding him close. Our little family had grown stronger, bound by love and resilience. We had faced ugliness head-on, and in doing so, we had ensured that love, not blood, defined us. The confrontation marked a turning point. The backlash drove Linda to move away, her presence no longer casting a shadow over our lives. With her gone, we rebuilt our family's foundation stronger than ever. Lucas flourished, his laughter becoming a constant melody in our home, and the love within our household deepened. One afternoon, as I watched Lucas chase a butterfly in the yard, I felt the depth of our bond. "You know, Lucas, no matter what anyone says, you are loved beyond measure. This will always be your home," I said, my voice steady with conviction. "I know, Mom," Lucas replied, his eyes bright with certainty. "I love you and Dad so much too." Linda faded into a distant memory, but the lessons she left behind lingered. We learned the importance of standing firm against toxic influences and reinforcing the values of inclusivity and love within our family and community. As Lucas's laughter filled the air, I knew we were stronger for the challenges we had faced. Love was our greatest defense, a bond unbreakable and unwavering. And now a question for you. Do you think it's ever justifiable to cut a family member out of your life if their beliefs fundamentally oppose your own, especially when those beliefs harm others? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this story if it resonated with you and subscribe to the channel for more powerful tales that inspire, challenge, and connect us. Thank you for watching. Hi, I'm Olivia. You know those moments when everything shifts and nothing will ever be the same. Mine hit at midnight on a freezing January night, with a 102-degree fever and my sister Marina screaming at me to get out of her house. Let me backtrack. I was a second-year medical resident at Metro General, working grueling hours while battling an autoimmune condition that flared at the worst times. Marina, my older sister by 5 years, had offered me a place to stay until I got back on my feet. "What are sisters for?" she'd said, wrapping me in a hug. Back then, it felt like a lifeline. Funny how a new boyfriend changes things. "You can't kick me out. I can barely stand," I said, shivering on the couch, wrapped in the blanket Mom had knitted years ago. "Kyle's moving in tomorrow," Marina snapped. Her arms were crossed, her expression icy. "We need your room." Kyle, her boyfriend of 3 whole months, leaned casually against the wall, wearing a smirk that made my stomach churn. "You've had plenty of time to find your own place," she added. "We never discussed me moving out," I protested, my head pounding and vision swimming. "I'm paying rent." "About that," she interrupted, her tone dripping with mock sympathy. "The money you've been sending doesn't cover your share." It was a blatant lie. I had receipts for every payment. Thank God for my best friend Sophia's advice to document everything. Sophia, a fellow resident who'd seen enough family drama to rival a soap opera, had warned me that Marina's sudden generosity felt off. Desperate, I called our parents. Surely they'd set Marina straight. "Just pack your things and come home," Mom said, sounding distracted. "You know how Marina gets when she's made up her mind." "She's sick, Diana," Dad grumbled in the background. "Tell her to stop being dramatic and work it out with her sister." Shaking, I ended the call. Dr. Chen, my supervisor, had warned me last week that stress was delaying my recovery. "Family should be your support system," she'd said, "not your stressor." I texted Sophia, "Marina's kicking me out. Need help." Her reply was instant, "On my way. Don't move. Document everything." So feverish and delirious, I hit record on my phone. Marina's voice rose as she hurled my medical supplies into a garbage bag, while Kyle chimed in about how I always played the sick card. They had no idea that their midnight eviction was only the beginning. Sophia's guest room became my haven. Between hospital shifts, I pieced together the truth behind Marina's lies. Those rent payments, she'd been pocketing my money while telling Kyle I was freeloading. One morning, Sophia handed me her tablet. "You need to see this," she said. Kyle had a pattern. 3 women in 2 years, each with eerily similar stories. Move in, isolate, drain their finances, then move on. "Marina won't believe this," I said, my voice hollow. "She doesn't have to," Sophia replied, scrolling through more evidence. "But your parents? They need to see who they're really siding with." Meanwhile, my parents were in full denial mode. Mom flooded the family group chat with Sunday dinner plans, pretending nothing had happened. Dad left voicemails about keeping the peace. "She's going through a rough time," Mom said when she showed up at the hospital unannounced, holding a thermos of soup. "You need to stop holding a grudge." I stared at her, incredulous. I was running a fever of 102 when she threw me out. "You're a doctor, honey. You'll land on your feet," she said, as if I excused it all. Later, Dr. Chen found me crying in the break room. She handed me a steaming cup of tea. "Family dynamics," she said, her voice soft, "are the hardest disease to treat. Sometimes the only cure is cutting out the infection before it spreads." She was right. Marina had begun spinning a web of lies, telling relatives I was unstable and prone to harassment. Our cousin Sarah called me one evening, her tone cautious. "Marina said you've been having breakdowns at work," Sarah ventured. I took a deep breath. "Actually, I've been documenting everything," I said, forwarding Sarah screenshots of my rent payments along with the midnight eviction video. I included Sophia's findings about Kyle's sketchy background and Marina's lies. The line went silent for a moment. Then Sarah spoke, her voice low. "You know she just got promoted, right? She's been telling everyone how Kyle helped her land the position." That was interesting. Kyle had claimed to be a business consultant, but Sophia's research showed his last legitimate job ended 3 years ago. Suddenly, the pieces were starting to form a picture. One Marina wouldn't want her prestigious law firm to see. "Your sister's reputation is everything to her," Sophia said later as we sifted through the evidence. "Maybe it's time she learned about the consequences of throwing people away." I stared at yet another missed call from my parents. They'd chosen their side. Now it was time to choose mine. Make copies of everything, I told Sophia. We're going to need them. The push came during Marina's big moment, the annual law firm gala, where she was set to receive her promotion. Sophia's contact at the firm confirmed the story. Kyle had used his fake business connections to help Marina network her way up. Your sister's about to learn a lesson about due diligence, Sophia said, adjusting the neckline of my dress. As a client of the firm through the hospital, I had a legitimate invitation. Marina hadn't counted on that. I spotted my parents the moment I walked in. Mom went pale, and Dad suddenly found his shoes fascinating. Across the room, Marina was glowing under the spotlight, Kyle glued to her side, playing the devoted boyfriend. When she saw me, her smile vanished. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, pulling me aside. Her mask of composure was already cracking. "Supporting my sister's success," I said sweetly. "Isn't that what family does?" Kyle stepped forward, trying to puff up his chest. I turned to him, my smile razor sharp. "Actually, Kyle, I'd love to hear more about your consulting work. Especially with Bradbury Corp. Wasn't that right before they filed for bankruptcy?" His face turned an impressive shade of gray. Bradbury Corp. wasn't just a random name. It was one of his previous scams. Marina's law firm was handling the bankruptcy case. "You need to leave," Marina said, her voice shaking. "You're just jealous of my success." "Success built on what?" I shot back. "Kyle's fake references or the money you stole from me?" The managing partner chose that exact moment to approach. "Olivia, Dr. Chen speaks highly of you. I didn't realize you were Marina's sister." Marina's grip on her champagne flute tightened as I smiled at him. "Oh, I have some fascinating family stories to share," I said, pulling out my phone, including a video of Marina illegally evicting me while I was severely ill and admitting to embezzling my rent payments. "You wouldn't dare," Marina hissed. "Try me." I turned to Kyle. "And those women from Bradbury Corp send their regards. They're very interested in your consulting ventures." The next 10 minutes were pure chaos. Kyle, proving himself every bit the coward Sophia's background check suggested, tried to slip out the door. Security intercepted him. He was already wanted for questioning in the Bradbury case. Marina's meltdown was spectacular, her screams echoing through the hall as guests filmed every second on their phones. Mom's attempts to intervene only worsened the situation. "Marina's behavior is just high spirits," Mom stammered, turning to the managing partner. "Olivia's always been sensitive." "Sensitive?" A familiar voice cut through the chaos. Dr. Chen had arrived, her gaze steely. "You mean the resident who handled a triple trauma case last week while managing a chronic illness? The one your daughter endangered by throwing her out in freezing weather?" The whispers began, spreading like wildfire through the crowd. Marina's carefully constructed facade crumbled. She'd built her reputation on lies, and tonight, every one of them was coming to light. Sometimes karma doesn't wait. Sometimes it just needs a little push. Marina's carefully crafted image dissolved like sugar in the rain. Dad finally looked up from his shoes, the dawning realization in his eyes. But it was far too late for damage control. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about what you do. It's letting the truth take its moment on stage. The aftermath unfolded faster than I could have imagined. Marina's promotion disappeared, just like Kyle, who bolted the moment the police started asking questions about his role in the Bradbury Corp scandal. Her law firm, desperate to distance itself from the fallout, graciously accepted her voluntary resignation. 2 weeks later, I was in the hospital cafeteria when Sophia joined me. "I thought you'd be celebrating," she said, watching me toy with my lunch. I showed her my phone, displaying the latest text from my mom. "You've ruined Marina's life." Sophia snorted. "You didn't ruin anything. Marina did this to herself. The fact that your parents can't see that tells you everything you need to know about moving forward." She was right. Marina had been forced to sell her house, the one she'd partly funded with my stolen rent money. Last I heard, she'd moved back in with our parents, who were now dealing with their own social exile. Word of how they enabled Marina's behavior had spread quickly among their circle of friends. During rounds, Dr. Chen mentioned casually, "Your mother tried to corner me in the parking lot." I froze. "What did she say?" "She suggested you'd overreacted. I told her the hospital has an excellent ethics board if she'd like to formally discuss the medical neglect of a vulnerable patient." That made me smile. My chosen family had only grown stronger. Sophia and I signed a lease together last week. Her spare room was now my home. My colleagues, led by Dr. Chen, became my unwavering support system. Even cousin Sarah showed up with moving boxes and takeout. "I found these in Marina's stuff," she said, handing me a stack of greeting cards. "All the birthday and holiday cards you sent her over the years." She kept every card but didn't care about her actual sister, I said, tossing them into the recycling. "Marina's been calling again," Sarah admitted, "trying to get people to convince you to help her rebuild her life. She says she's changed. That Kyle manipulated her." I shook my head. Good for her. She can change on her own time. Not long after, my phone buzzed with another text from Dad. "Your mother's heartbroken. When are you going to forgive and move forward as a family?" I showed the text to Sarah and Sophia. "Watch this," I said, locking both of their numbers. That evening, Dr. Chen stopped me after my shift. "Your latest labs came back," she said with a rare smile. "The stress reduction in your life is paying off. Your numbers are the best they've been in months." Funny how removing toxic people can heal you better than any medication. The law firm even sent a card last week renewing their hospital contract. They specifically requested me as their liaison. Apparently, integrity matters to them. Who knew? Marina's last attempt to contact me came in the form of a tear-stained letter filled with excuses and apologies. I didn't read past the first line. "Some people mistake forgiveness for permission to hurt you again. I'm a doctor. I took an oath to do no harm. But that also includes not allowing others to harm me. The night they threw me out into the cold taught me everything I needed to know about my family. Now I've built a new one. One rooted in respect, trust, and real love. To anyone watching who's been hurt by family, remember this. You don't owe anyone a place in your life if they show you they don't deserve it. Sometimes the family you choose is the only medicine you'll ever need. The best revenge? Living well and letting karma take care of the rest." What do you think of Olivia's journey? Would you have handled things differently? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more powerful stories about standing up to toxicity and reclaiming your peace. Let's keep supporting each other through the challenges of healing and rebuilding. See you in the next story.